It's Monday, February 10th, 2025. Some not so great news and some good news for the Trump administration. One senator sheds more light on the D.C. Blackhawk collision, and cowardice isn't just benign, and I'll tell you why next on the AM Update.
Harry is whipped. Do you know the expression whipped?
I'm familiar with the
I won't use the full expression.
I believe that this DOGE program is one of the most important audits of government or changes to government structure we have seen.
I think the single dumbest phrase in military history is our diversity is our strength. I think our strength is our unity.
The week or two after the election was pretty intense. We are dealing with depression, anxiety, medical problems that are related to that.
Well, apparently the only thing less intelligible than Kendrick Lamar's halftime performance at the Super Bowl yesterday was the Kansas City Chiefs' offensive execution and game plan as the Philadelphia Eagles defeated the Chiefs in the Super Bowl 40-14. Just an incredible performance, especially by the Eagles' defensive line, really flustered the Chiefs' offense and Patrick Mahomes all night long. There were many Super Bowl commercials that were kind of striking a different tone than what we've seen in years past. Maybe a more patriotic, more conservative tone. We'll get into that later on this week. But the Eagles of Philadelphia are the Super Bowl champions for Super Bowl 59. Congratulations to them in what was a blowout 40-14. But in other more serious and pressing news, there's this from Fox News' Bill Malugin. The LA Times reports they've obtained a leaked government document which indicates there will be a large-scale immigration and customs enforcement operation in the Los Angeles area before the end of the month. This comes after the Aurora, Colorado operation was leaked, with CBS and NBC writing articles citing numerous U.S. officials that it was coming, forcing ICE to reschedule it to last week, and the op was a total failure. A large-scale Chicago operation from Immigration and Customs Enforcement was also leaked to the media during Trump's first week in office, leading to canceling and rescheduling of that operation as well. Of course, it's extremely dangerous for ICE officers to have their plans leaked and for their targets to know they're coming. So this means somebody within the federal government keeps on leaking these large-scale ICE immigration raids and operations, putting immigration and customs enforcement officers in harm's way and completely foiling some of these large-scale operations in large metro areas. That's a problem for the new Trump administration, and that is not some good news. Again, just 3 instances already of large operations planned by Immigration and Customs Enforcement being leaked to the media and thus foiling those operations. The third one, of course, being in Los Angeles coming over the weekend. But there is some good news for the Trump administration, despite those leaks coming out about the ICE raids, with most describing him as tough, energetic, and focused and effective, and is doing what he'd promised during his campaign. President Trump has started his term with net positive marks from Americans overall. Many say he's doing more than they expected, and of those who say this, most like what they see. His deportation policy finds majority approval overall, just as most voters say they wanted during the campaign, and that extends to sending troops to the border too. According to a CBS News and YouGov poll, most voters describe Donald Trump as tough, with 69% saying that, 63% say he's energetic, 60% say he's focused, and 58% say he's effective. So again, despite some of these problems from within the federal government, as I just discussed, with an already popular policy of deporting illegal aliens, Donald Trump still has tailwinds behind him from the American public, and that is good news. He can continue to operate the way that he's done for the first 3 weeks. Donald Trump is continuing to take away security clearances from key figures, beginning with Joe Biden. He said in a post on Truth Social over the weekend, there is no need for Joe Biden to continue receiving classified information. Therefore, we're immediately revoking Joe Biden's security clearances and stopping his daily intelligence briefings. He set this precedent in 2021 when he instructed the intelligence community to stop the 45th President of the United States, me, from accessing details on national security, a courtesy provided to former presidents. The Hur report revealed that Biden suffers from poor memory and even in his prime could not be trusted with sensitive information. So Donald Trump stopping Joe Biden from having access to daily intelligence briefings. He's also stripping away the security clearances from New York Attorney General Letitia James, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, and former Secretary of State Antony Blinken. They will not be receiving security clearance to access sensitive information. as well. And then there's this from the New York Post. President Trump has ordered the Secret Service late last week to provide him every bit of information about his two would-be assassins. He told the Post, quote, "I'm entitled to know. I want to find out about the two assassins. Why did the one guy have 6 cell phones and why did the other guy have 5 foreign apps? No more holding back because of Biden. I'm entitled to know. No excuses." 6 cell phones, as he mentioned there, were allegedly found in the car of Ryan Routh, the 59-year-old suspect in the second assassination attempt on Trump last September at the Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach, Florida. Thomas Matthew Crooks, the 19-year-old who shot Trump in the ear at his rally in Butler, Pennsylvania last July, allegedly had many foreign apps on his phone that was encrypted that the intelligence community had trouble getting into. So, again, that's a story to keep an eye on as Donald Trump demands the Secret Service hand over all information they have on his two would-be assassins. Trump was also interviewed by Piers Morgan late last week and had this to say about Prince Harry and whether he intends to deport him.
Harry is whipped. Do you know the expression whipped?
I'm familiar with the phrase.
I won't use the full expression. But Harry is whipped like no person I think I've ever seen. I'm not a fan of Meghan.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. And I wasn't right from the beginning.
Said
I think
to
poor
you.
Harry is being led around by his nose, okay?
You think it's going to end?
I do. I've been a very good predictor, as you know. I predicted almost everything. It'll end, and it'll end bad. And I wonder if Harry's going to go back on his hands and knees and say, please, I think Harry has been led down a path.
If you were the Queen, is it at the stage now, would you remove their royal title?
I would.
Obviously not the most important or pressing of issues at all time. But Donald Trump, with near unanimity, he just speaks and says what everybody is thinking. I don't really care that much about the royal family. But anybody with a functioning amygdala can tell that everything that Donald Trump just said about Prince Harry is absolutely true. The dude is just completely and utterly whipped. Now back to some more serious news. During the mid-air collision between the U.S. Black Hawk helicopter and the commercial American Airlines flight near Reagan International Airport, a key safety system was reportedly off in the military aircraft. Senate Commerce Committee Chair Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, told reporters that the Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast System, or ADSB, permitted in the military aircraft, had been turned off during the crash. Cruz said, quote, "This was a training mission, so there was no compelling national security reason for the ADSB to be turned off." Now, ADSB is an advanced surveillance system that's able to track other aircraft and their locations and is significantly more accurate than radar tracking systems. The helicopter had been flying around 100 feet above the maximum limit at the time of the crash, and it was reportedly a half-mile off course. As I'm aware, this new ADSB system, if you fly into controlled airspace of basically any stripe, whether it's where I live in Des Moines, which is a fairly small controlled airspace, or whether it's a massive airspace like Washington, D.C., if you are flying just a Cessna, you have to have ADSB equipped in your airplane now. If you're just a private pilot, and you're flying into controlled airspace, you have to have ADSB equipped and turned on. Why this military aircraft had ADSB turned off? Again, another layer of the mystery of this story. When we come back, Doge is doing good work, according to incoming Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. We hear from the Secretary of Defense about the biggest lie and dumbest phrase in military history, and why cowardice isn't benign, it's actually hostile. That's coming up next. Let us not forget the human toll that Doge is taking on numerous American families.
It's been, It's been like 2 weeks? 2 weeks. I'm done. You want to talk about regretting your vote? In 2 weeks, I went from the highest high to being unemployed. Lost my job last night, got a phone call. The repercussions of what Elon Musk are doing with the USAID has real repercussions for real people. For the last 7 years, I have been a shift lead on Project Bus, where we studied to find out if the wheels on the bus went round around or not. And all of a sudden, Elon, who's not even elected, gets in, and I'm out of a job. What do I tell my family? What do I tell my kids? This isn't a joke. This USAID stuff is not a joke, man. It's affecting real people. And the worst part is, what if we never figure out if in fact the wheels on the bus do go round and round?
That is excellent. I'm not sure the name of that man, but that is just perfect. It was shared by an account named Randy. The TikTok account is Godcat44. But that's just a perfect encapsulation of what Doge is doing and uncovering just the stupid stuff that your taxpayer money is being spent on. Incoming Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says Doge is one of the most important audits of government in his lifetime. Here he is talking to Bloomberg.
Elon and I are completely aligned in terms of cutting waste and increasing accountability and transparency for the American people. I believe that this Doge program in my adult life is one of the most important audits of government or changes to government structure we have seen. That when I was in my 20s, we had the Grace Report, and there's some great suggestions that came out of that, never implemented. Under Clinton and Gore, I think it was to government efficiency or reduce government. Nothing happened. So President Trump came in, there's a big agenda, and I think that there are gigantic cost savings for the American people here. And I think it's unfortunate the way the media wants to lampoon what is going on. These are highly trained professionals. This is not some roving band going around doing things. This is methodical, and it is going to yield big savings.
That is incoming Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who says that Doge, the work that they're doing in uncovering government fraud and waste and abuse, is some of the best work he's seen in his lifetime. Amidst the flurry of new changes at the Pentagon, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth took time out to address Pentagon staff late last week. He says there's the biggest lie and dumbest phrase in the history of the military.
I think the single dumbest phrase in military history is our diversity is our strength. I think our strength is our unity. Our strength is our shared purpose, regardless of our background, regardless of how we grew up, regardless of our gender, regardless of our race. In this department, we will treat everyone equally. We will treat everyone with fairness. We will treat everyone with respect. And we will judge you as an individual by your merit and by your commitment to the team and the mission. That's how it has been. That's how it will be. Any inference otherwise is meant to divide or create complications that otherwise should not and do not exist.
Please tell me, shed some light for me. How would you disagree with that? How would a lefty listening to that just completely disagree with that? I don't know how, yet they're finding ways to do so nonetheless. Check this story out. Federal Communications Commission Chairman Brendan Carr announced Thursday the government agency had launched an investigation into a San Francisco radio station, claiming it exposed the live location of undercover federal immigration agents. KCBS 740 AM told listeners on January 26th detailed information about immigration and customs enforcement agents. The segment shared the make, color, and model of multiple unmarked federal law enforcement vehicles, as well as the exact location of immigration and customs enforcement officers conducting operations on the quote-unquote east side of town. Carr told Fox News' Brian Kilmeade that the broadcast was really concerning. He said, quote, "What happened was you had ICE agents undercover doing operations in East San Jose, part of the town known for violent gang activity, and you had this radio station broadcasting the live location, identifying the unmarked vehicles that they were in." Carr told Fox News that the FCC has launched a formal investigation into the San Francisco-based radio station over its reporting. The radio station's FCC license requires that it operate in the public interest, convenience, and necessity. The inquiry seeks to determine whether the station violated those terms. Carr told Newsmax later on Thursday that lots of complaints were made to the FCC regarding the station's conduct. In September, the then Democrat-controlled FCC approved leftist billionaire George Soros' essential takeover of $400 million worth of radio stations. One of those radio stations, this very one that we're talking about, San Francisco's KCBS. What's the benign, innocent explanation for that story? And now here's this. You'll recall before the election, veteran journalist Mark Halperin sat down with Tucker Carlson to discuss the state of play in the United States where the election was. And I remember one comment he made stuck out to me more than others. He said, if Donald Trump won the election, he predicted that you were going to see just waves upon waves of mental health crises in this country. Well, now Mark Halperin is back. He talked to a doctor named Glenn Burnett about what he's seeing, whether his prediction was correct, and where we go from here. Again, this is veteran journalist Mark Halperin interviewing a doctor named Glenn Burnett about an epidemic of depression and other psychological impacts of the election.
It has been extremely intense the last, the week or two after the election was pretty intense. It then calmed down, and now it's really back up. We are dealing with depression, anxiety, all kinds of medical problems that are related to that, like insomnia, chest pain, chest pressure. And then there's some genuine fear, panic. I hear things from people all the time that I don't want to repeat because they're people I don't think would believe me. That just people have these very, very severe anxieties about what is going to happen to them. And it is affecting their lives. The other thing I would add, and I think even more unfortunately, is the elections always happen right around the holidays. And I've been a physician for 30 years. I've never seen this happen before where, to this level where people just completely disinvited their families and, there's just this huge breach in normal family dynamics. And I'll be honest with you, it's bad I've had, young people in my office crying because, grandma told them not to come or whatever. But then weeks later, I've had the people who did the disinviting get all emotional because they don't know how to get themselves out of the spiral they're in with their family members.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting. I haven't seen anything. I told you in the email that I was a physician during 9/11, and it was like this then, but it was everybody. This is just about as intense, but it's not everybody. And it's people are having real crises.
Yeah. That is incredible, what you just heard there. That's Dr. Glenn Burnett being interviewed by veteran journalist Mark Halperin. Halperin, before the election, told Tucker Carlson he predicted that we would see waves of mental illness epidemics around this country, across the country, if Donald Trump won. So Halperin, testing his own theory and hypothesis, invited a doctor on to talk about this very thing. And the doctor said, yes, this is akin to 9/11. Number one, on a serious note, that's just sad. That's just sad that people allow politics to do this to themselves. They allow this. And I'm just going to be honest with you. It's really one side of the political aisle. It really is. When you are in a cult, and really that side of the political aisle is a cult. Your God is the acquisition of power. And when your God betrays you, you lose an election. That's going to have profound psychological effects. So that's a serious comment. The unserious comment that I have to make. The next time you hear a lefty claim that Donald Trump is literally killing people, know that they are correct, just not the way that they think. Because it sounds like they're killing themselves over stress about an election, politics. So they are correct, just very indirectly and not the way they believe. All right, when we come back, why cowardice is not just a benign thing that can just exist on its own. Cowardice is really hostility. That's coming up next. And finally, air analysis. There was an interesting dichotomy that played out online this weekend, and I don't see very many people talking about it, at least not the way that I'm about to talk about it. So last week, you might have seen some news stories about a staffer at the Department of Government Efficiency who was fired for some, let's call them spicy takes that were exposed on social media. It was the same boring, tired playbook. Some dysgenic reporter from, I don't even know if she lives in the United States, doxed a worker for the Department of Government Efficiency, found his social media channels, found some unsavory, let's call them spicy takes about Indian people, and then that staffer got fired. Well, that was not the end of the story, because later on in the week, Elon Musk brought this back up, Vice President Vance brought this back up, even Donald Trump was asked about it, and he says, you know what, people should not be fired just for some maybe things that we don't agree with on social media. They're spicy, probably bad form, but people shouldn't get fired over things like that. And so, as far as I'm aware, actually, this staffer is now working back at Doge. I don't agree with saying that make Indian hate great again. I think the staffer said something along the lines of normalize hatred of Indians or something like that. That's obviously something that I don't agree with. I think it's unsavory. And if the guy is like, you know what, I was younger when I posted that, it's not really who I am now. That doesn't reflect my work at the Department of Government Efficiency. No, you shouldn't be fired for things like that. Well, here's the dichotomy that came to play this week. Congressman Ro Khanna quoted on X J.D. Vance's take on this issue. Here's J.D. Vance's take. He wrote on Friday, quote, "Here's my view. I obviously disagree with some of Elez's posts." That was the staffer who got fired. "But I don't think stupid social media activity should ruin a kid's life. We shouldn't reward journalists who try to destroy people ever. So I say, bring him back to Doge." Pretty reasonable take. A take that I agree with. Here's Democrat Congressman Ro Khanna of California, reacting to J.D. Vance's take on this issue. Are you going to tell him to apologize for saying normalize Indian hate before this rehire? Just asking for the sake of both of our kids. Congressman Khanna, I believe, is of Indian descent. And of course, J.D. Vance's wife is Indian as well. Here's J.D. Vance's retort. "For the sake of both of our kids, grow up," Vance says. "Racist trolls on the internet, while offensive, don't threaten my kids. You know what does? A culture that denies grace to people who make mistakes. A culture that encourages congressmen to act like whiny children. I cannot overstate how much I loathe this emotional blackmail," Vance says, pretending to be concerned. "My kids, God willing, will be risk takers. They won't think constantly about whether a flippant comment or a wrong viewpoint will follow them around for the rest of their lives. They'll tell stupid jokes. They'll develop views that they think are wrong or even gross later on. I made mistakes as a kid, and I thank God I grew up in a culture that encouraged me to grow and learn and feel remorse when I screwed up and offer grace when others did. I don't worry about my kids making mistakes or developing views they later regret. I don't even worry that much about trolls on the internet. You know what I do worry about, Congressman? They'll grow up to be a U.S. congressman who engages in emotional blackmail over a kid's social media posts. You disgust me. I cannot tell you how important and overjoyed I am to see the sitting Vice President of the United States completely take a nuclear bomb to the premise that you have to apologize for every single thing you've ever said ever in life in order to be welcomed into polite society. He just took a complete nuclear bomb to the premise of capital P progressivism. That's what he did there. Just completely nuked it. No, I'm not apologizing. No, I don't think the kid should apologize. In fact, you need to apologize for engaging in emotional blackmail, because that is the structure by which the left is built on. Emotional blackmail. You want to be a good person, you will believe this, 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 and this. So this is one side of this dichotomy. J.D. Vance, a sitting U.S. Vice President, completely destroying the premise that you should be forced to apologize for anything and everything that falls outside of my very narrow Overton window view of the world. That is a good thing. Here's the other side of this dichotomy. Donald Trump's pick to lead the Office of Management and Budget is Russ Vought. Now, OMB is a very boring bean counter job that has actually quite a bit of power and pull and leverage. Russ Vought is a good person. from what I have seen. He is a true believer, not only in America First, MAGA, but he's a true believer in the God of the universe. This might be one of the most important high-profile positions in Donald Trump's cabinet, and he was just confirmed for that post last week. Vogt is an alumnus of Wheaton College in Illinois, a pretty well-regarded, at least prior to this age, Christian Protestant institution, evangelical institution. Last week, Wheaton College put out a post on social media praising one of their own alumni for being appointed and confirmed for the Director of Office of Management and Budget. They have the right to do that. He went to their school. He's now a high-ranking official in the federal government. They should do that for any alumni who follows a similar path. Well, a few blue-haired, spiritually disturbed losers took Wheaton College to task on social media, and so Wheaton College folded like a cheap suit. In a post over the weekend, they said, quote, "However, the political situation surrounding the appointment of Russ Vought led to a significant concern expressed online. It was not our intention to embroil the college in a political discussion or dispute. Our institutional and theological commitments are clear that the college, as a nonprofit institution, does not make political endorsements. Wheaton College's focus is on Christ and his kingdom," just completely apologizing like a bunch of cowards. So this is the other side of the dichotomy. On the one side, you have J.D. Vance, completely nuking the premise that to be a good person, you have to completely toe the line, the politically correct line, every waking moment of your life. Just completely destroying that premise, not making any apologies for it whatsoever. And then on the other side, you have Wheaton College with the other impulse. The driving desire to be seen as a good person or good people, or I'm a Christian, but I'm not one of those Christians. That desire is a drug, more addictive than heroin, or more devastating than meth, and wholly predicated on lies and the fear of man. And that's what you saw Wheaton College do. It seems as if the broader culture, see that as J.D. Vance, he's a Catholic. The broader culture, too, it's rejecting this drug, this impulse to be seen as a good person. Or I'm a Christian, but not one of those Christians. I think the broader culture is rejecting this drug at a quicker pace than certain evangelical institutions and certainly the broader church. And I think November is all the proof you need to indicate that's true. This rejection of this drug is happening. That's a good thing, but it also means that this is an era of opportunity for these institutions and the church to not only evangelize but disciple as the broader culture commences its rejection of the false god of capital P pluralism. So my concern, obviously, is that the typical run-of-the-mill, lowest common denominator American evangelical church and institution isn't just not ready for a moment like this. It's operating as if the year is 2004 or 2014, living in a completely different galaxy than the one we currently reside in. And episodes like this with Wheaton College underscore that concern. Russ Vought's confirmation as OMB director is a huge deal. The pull and leverage he'll command with this post cannot be overstated. And he is, I think, objectively one of Trump's top 5 appointees, and in a cabinet full of very qualified, proven allies to our side. That's saying something. And Wheaton College should boast of this. But after being on the receiving end of a few boring, rote, and recycled slings and arrows from a few spiritually disturbed losers, Wheaton folded like a cheap suit. This is why, when you see godly men with public platforms, see that as J.D. Vance doing righteous work, boldly speaking and prophesying to the aforementioned culture that's already indicated it's open for spiritual business for the first time in a hot minute, you would do well to encourage those men in their work, because these old institutions aren't just not going to help. Their cowardice, like we saw with Wheaton, their cowardice is effectual hostility. It's not that they're just benign. It's not that they're just like a paperweight sitting over there. Their cowardice is hostility. So how's that for a dichotomy over the weekend? J.D. Vance, a Catholic, sitting Vice President of the United States, completely takes a nuclear bomb to the premise of political correctness, unapologetically nuking this drug, this desire to be seen as a good person or good people, or I'm a Christian, but not one of those Christians, completely nuking all of that on the one hand. And then Wheaton College completely succumbing to that very same impulse on the other side. That is one heck of a dichotomy. And I know where you stand as well. I'm with J.D. Vance, not Wheaton. Not whatever, and it's not just Wheaton, it's just that impulse over there. I know where I stand. The way forward is what J.D. Vance did. The old way of stinking thinking is what Wheaton College has engaged in. That'll do it for Monday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.